one cool strategy that people are starting to pursue and also have shown to be quite effective and exciting is using focused ultrasound to target the opening of this BBB so you can get those beneficial antibodies to get to where they need to be to have their most beneficial effect.
Welcome to Curing with Sound, a podcast presented by the Focus Ultrasound Foundation. I'm your host, Allison Preston Smith. Dr. John Lukens is an innovative Alzheimer's researcher whose work is pivotal in the fight against neurological diseases. In 2023, he and his team discovered a molecule in the brain responsible for orchestrating the immune system's responses to Alzheimer's and multiple sclerosis, a finding that could improve the body's ability to fight those and other neurological diseases. He serves as an associate professor of neuroscience at the University of Virginia and was recently appointed as the director of the Harrison Family Center for Alzheimer's and Neurodegenerative Disease. Dr. Lukens obtained his PhD at the University of Virginia and completed a postdoctoral fellowship at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital before returning to UVA. He has published more than 70 papers and book chapters and has received numerous awards, including being named a Hartwell Foundation investigator in 2016. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Yeah, great to be here today. I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thanks for having me.
Can you start by telling us what drew you to focusing on neuroscience and immunology?
Yeah. I guess on the immunology side of things, I was always interested in biomedical research. And when I took immunology, I was just struck by how many diseases that its influences, it plays an important role. So everything from cancer, where it helps to eliminate tumors, to obviously infections, to things like transplant biology. It was hard to find a human disorder where the immune system wasn't the main player. And in terms of the neuroscience component of it, it really wasn't until at the end of my postdoc that I decided to make a change over to studying the role of the immune system in the brain. And at that point, it was more of an opportunity to make a difference. I got into research to hopefully find cures and treatments for those who are suffering from disorders. So I saw that as an opportunity to really make a mark and help the field.
That's great. And can you tell us more about your research highlighting the connection between the immune system and the brain?
Yeah, so we have quite a few projects exploring the role of the immune system in neurological disorders. We're studying everything from Alzheimer's disease to traumatic brain injury. We have some projects in multiple sclerosis. Recently started some work with ALS, with collaborators doing some brain tumor work. But we're interested in a lot of different aspects, but I guess broadly, we're interested in how we can potentially harness the immune system to treat neurological diseases. And broadly speaking, there's probably two major areas: how to help remove neurotoxic material from the brain. And we look at that both at a cellular level, so that's the one component, and more at a systems level. So on the cellular level, we're trying to boost and rejuvenate the ability of microglial cells in the brain, and they're the garbage disposals of the brain on a cellular level, the garbage men that go around and help to identify trash, corral around it, eat it up, and hopefully limit its interaction with neurons, which are quite sensitive to it. And then the other component of the waste disposal system of the brain that we're looking at is more of a systems level. And it's basically looking at how drainage through the lymphatics, which are basically the vessels that are in our meninges above the brain parenchyma, how they can be modulated to help to eliminate all types of compounds that could cause neurons to not work correctly and also cause inflammation.
So how does our brain's immune system work, and why is it different from the rest of the body?
Yeah, so that's a huge question, a big one in the field. So I guess it's important to kind of highlight that for the longest time, up until probably about 15 years ago, the prevailing concept was that the immune system was separated from the brain. And the thought was that, the brain has developed certain properties that limit the interaction of the immune system in terms of causing any damage to those neurons, that if they're lost, then you're going to have a neurological disorder. And that made sense. And it definitely, there definitely were aspects of the brain that help support that idea and help push that forward. One of them being that the brain is surrounded by the blood-brain barrier, which is much more difficult to penetrate than most other, surrounding endothelial in other organs. And, and the other components that kind of led to this idea that the immune system was separated was the fact that there are very few resident immune cells in the brain, and also the cell types that are involved in setting up and kick-starting the immune system. The dendritic cells don't really exist in the brain. However, and I guess the final component that led to this idea of immunoprivilege, or the separation of the immune system from the brain, was the fact that until just recently, we thought the brain didn't have lymphatics. So lymphatics are just the way that the organs can drain out into the peripheral immune system, and things like antigens that, whether it's from self tissue or from an infection, they get cycled out and can meet the immune system where they can become activated, and then you can mount an antigen-specific T cell response out in the lymph node, which is kind of the reservoir of where the lymphatics drain. And this is the way that your immune system, in addition to being in the tissue, can also patrol and get a sense of what's going on in that organ. And like I said, it wasn't until recently that we've had a full appreciation that the brain does, in fact, have these lymphatic vessels that can drain all types of things. And one of the major reasons was where it was located. So it's located right under the bone of the skull. So when most people were doing any kind of pathology or any kind of dissections, a lot of times you cut the skull off and peel the skull off so you could see the brain parenchyma. And the lymphatics were kind of encased closely in this almost like fascia, which is on the meninges that's on the skull. And a lot of times it would be thrown out.
So how does this change our understanding of neurodegenerative diseases?
I guess so. In the sense of neurodegenerative diseases, one of the new hot topics, and there was actually a call for new proposals from the NIH just within the last couple of weeks, is now this renewed interest in how the immune system could be activated in response to this brain drainage. In particular, we were under the impression that there really weren't that many T cells in neurodegenerative lesions, whether that's Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's. That's completely changed, and it's now thought that this lymphatic vessel and how it is involved in orchestrating, coordinating a T cell response could be a really nice way to better understand the pathology and help potentially limit this, infiltration of T cells that could cause damage. Also, on the other end of it is obviously they're playing a very important role in a drainage pathway, and looking at that as a way to boost the removal of things like amyloid beta, alpha-synuclein, all these things that are associated and are known to be drivers of neuronal cell death and causing things like Alzheimer's and loss of neurons.
And there's been recent preclinical studies where focus ultrasound is being used to improve the flow to the cerebral spinal fluid and enhance the clearance of that amyloid beta.
Yeah. So one of the ways that focus ultrasound could really be leveraged to improve immunotherapies is by providing a mechanism to get those therapies into the brain at higher rate. So, as I mentioned before, the blood-brain barrier is really limiting the entry of many things from the periphery, whether that be cells, large molecules. In the case of some of the recent work, these are antibodies that are involved in targeting amyloid beta to help sequester it away. And, one of the major issues with those large antibodies is that very few of them are able to penetrate the brain. So one kind of cool strategy that people are starting to pursue and also have shown to be quite effective and exciting is using focused ultrasound to target the opening of this BBB so you can get those beneficial antibodies to get to where they need to be to have their most beneficial effect. So that's something that's definitely of high interest and excitement in the field. And, right now the primary is with amyloid beta antibodies for amyloidosis and Alzheimer's disease. But there's a whole, repertoire of additional antibodies that are going to be tested online in the coming years. In particular, anti-tau antibodies. So this is associated with frontotemporal dementia and also late stages of Alzheimer's disease. Those therapeutics are also going to run into similar kind of barriers, and focused ultrasound will be interesting to once they start entering late stage clinical trials, coupling focused ultrasound with those new therapeutics for other diseases to see if focused ultrasound could help to synergize and maximize the effect of those therapeutics too.
So on the other side of the equation, looking at releasing antigens to activate the immune system, could enhancing drainage with focused ultrasound to the lymphatics help to activate the immune response in the brain?
Yeah. So it definitely could, and it's being pursued. One way to look at it was, unfortunately, many tumors of the brain are what you would call cold, so that they don't have too many antigens that would promote a really robust immune response, something that could go in and be an anti-tumor response and eliminate it. So one way to help kind of boost that is using very high level focused ultrasound to ablate the tumor, and then also coupling that with a lymphatic boosting strategy to help to make sure some of those antigens that are elicited through the laser or basically ablation approach, basically frying the tumor, so ensuring that some of those antigens can get to where those armed effectors that would continue to fight the tumor and eliminate it. That's one way. In terms of the cancer immunology space too, there is this new line of therapeutics known as checkpoint inhibitors. So they basically provide a means to recuperate and rejuvenate effector T cells that they know they want to kill the tumors, but they just are functionally exhausted. And the antibodies work very well to rejuvenate the T cells. The problem is that it's really hard to get them into the brain. So work out of Yale in a Kiko's lab showed recently that by boosting lymphatic function, you could get a higher level of these T cell boosting antibodies into the brain to rejuvenate the immune response and promote better tumor control. So there's lots of strategies involving this lymphatic pathway, both with focused ultrasound and other modalities that could be of benefit going forward.
What are some of the most exciting developments in how the brain communicates with the immune system? And how could this open new avenues for treatment in both neurodegeneration and in cancer?
Yeah. So in my opinion, one of the most exciting areas is the biology of these microglial cells that I mentioned earlier, which are they're the only immune cells of the brain, and they play a really important role in, as I mentioned before, as kind of the garbage man of the brain, kind of clearing potentially damaged material. They also help to corral and surround it so it doesn't interact with neurons. They were their name, if you actually break it down, means micro glue. So for the longest time, obviously, we knew that neurons were the major players, and their firing controls all of our movements and everything. But the brain also has numerous other cells which are called glia, which are they were affectionately named after the glue, because at first they were thought to be like a scaffold that are there to hold the neurons in place. But there's now mounting evidence to suggest that microglia dysfunction in particular is a major event that is involved in Alzheimer's disease. So we're studying many of those and trying to find ways that we can alter the function of these microglia, similar to what individuals are doing with immune checkpoint inhibitors to boost T cell responses. We're trying to boost the beneficial responses of these key immune cells that are right there in the neurodegenerative disease lesions. In terms of the tumor component of it, these macrophages, these microglia, are also highly associated with the tumors of the brain, and they're actually quite suppressive in the case of the brain tumors, and they're a major barrier to getting the immune system to be able to be effective. So in the case there, some of the same immune pathways that we're using to modulate immune responses of these microglia could also be targeted to, boost inflammation or boost phagocytic abilities to maybe engulf or remove tumors, or potentially even provide a strategy to kind of clear a path for the T cells to be able to get in. And in terms of what we're doing with focused ultrasound, in this regard, we're working with a good friend and collaborator, Rich Price at UVA in the biomedical engineering department. We're using focused ultrasound to basically get gene editing approaches into the brain. So many of the targets that we found, it would be most beneficial and safest if we were able to only target them into the brain, as opposed to putting them everywhere. So he is spearheading efforts to target these through various different gene editing approaches, and also using focused ultrasound to target it to the correct regions to limit any kind of potential side effects or issues out in the periphery.
And would that be used with neurodegenerative diseases or with any other conditions?
Yeah, so we're hoping to kind of leverage that platform for both neurodegenerative diseases. Right now, most of the efforts are going to Alzheimer's disease, but same concepts can also be applied to Parkinson's and ALS and frontotemporal dementia. But the same strategies could also be used to kind of reinvigorate anti-tumor macrophage responses in cancers too. And that actually might be one of the early ways that we're able to kind of test the efficiency is with clinical trials in cancers, just because it's slightly easier to get involved in some of those studies at this point. But it's a really promising strategy that we hope will hopefully provide patients finally with ways to either limit the progression of their disorders, or even in some cases maybe help to repair and restore.
Great. Well, it sounds like you and your team have a lot of exciting research going on. So how can our listeners keep up with you?
Yeah, so you can check our website, which is lukenslab.com. And then I'm always posting science papers on Twitter. I don't know what my handle is. Let me find out my Twitter. So it's at Lukens, so my last name, and then John, and then R.
Any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Focus Ultrasound Foundation for all the amazing work they've done. So Focus Ultrasound has had a really amazing impact personally on my family. Most males in our family have essential tremor, and it was having a pretty huge negative impact on my father's professional life. And he got Focus Ultrasound treatment for his essential tremor at UPenn a number of years ago, and it's completely changed his life. And it's really given him kind of a new lease on life and enjoying some of the things that he likes to do. Today, my uncle is scheduled to get his done too. And he's been chomping at the bit to get it done because he's seen how much of a positive impact it's had for my father. So really wanted to thank, the whole foundation for everything they do in terms of advancing the technology and also helping individuals, get this life-changing treatment done.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for all of your important research as well. It's been great to talk with you.
Thanks.
This episode of Curing with Sound has been presented by the Focused Ultrasound Foundation. If you would like to learn more about Focused Ultrasound or the Foundation, visit our website at fusfoundation.org. You can also sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media.